All right, good evening, everyone. We will get started. It is Wednesday, November 16th, 7 p.m. We are going to open up our first budget work session of the 2022 calendar year for the 2023 budget. So we'll move into our first agenda item, 2023 budget review. I'll open the floor for Mayor Slaughter and Tracy Rash. They are going to give us just a brief introduction of the overall budget. I think, just kind of go through some assumptions they're working through. I think it'll help maybe answer some questions that a bunch of us might have initially and help streamline the, at least this meeting, if not both meetings a little bit. So I'll turn it over to Mayor Slaughter.
Thank you. Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council and the administration. Yes, what you have before you is the 2023 proposed budget with a zero tax increase. And we realize obviously that this budget is being presented a little differently than it has in the past. The amounts that are presented are accurate to the best of our ability, given the antiquated accounting system, lack of some of the reconciliations and audits for the past four. Is this one?
Yeah, it's on.
For the past 4 years, time constraints, and we wanted to tie the city's capital budget as well, which has historically been an isolated process, as we all know, and not integrated. And we wanted to integrate that into the operating budget to establish a system that would create a sustainable plan for capital needs for the city moving forward. So you'll notice that this year, the capital budget at the end of the budget booklet will have a plan actually funded. It's not a wish list as we've done, so to speak, in previous years. We actually went with each department. We met with each department head, Tracy and myself, talked about capital needs, put a list together and formulate a plan both for 2022 here year end and then to fund those capital purchases moving forward. We've also revamped some of the budget, obviously, as you can see, within the actual budget and the order of it. And so for some of the more technicalities on that, I'll turn that over to Tracy and then circle back around to answer questions after that.
Good evening, everyone. The budget books that you have in front of you have a number of sections, the first being a summary of the general fund. And again, the departments have been categorized in a way that the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development suggests that you order your budget. So that's the summary page. Behind the summary page are each of the individual sections of the budget so that you can look at more detail for each section. We've also provided you with a lot of history for each of those accounts so that you can sort of see trends or just the background of how the accounts flow. After the first blue page, you'll see that there are the number of smaller funds that are included. The next section beyond that is the salaries, and then the next section beyond that is the capital projects chart. Couple of things, as I said, it's presented in the order the DCED or Pennsylvania Department of Economic and Community Development suggests. Information Technology Department, which has historically been part of the general fund budget, has been moved to City Hall operating. And the reason for that is the IT department operates as what's called an internal service. So the IT department is providing services to each of the departments of the city. And for fair presentation of each of those departments, an allocation of those IT costs to the department is needed. So for instance, if IT buys a cybersecurity package, to have it isolated in an IT department by itself doesn't make much sense because every department of the city is benefiting from it. So we've moved IT from the general fund into City Hall operating and then allocated those costs to every department. So every department bears its fair share of costs. Each department is then allocated its share of rent, facility operating costs, and information technology. And they are included in each department's budget as City Hall operating allocation. Each department has a line item that's been added now that's called transfer to capital projects. And what we've done is put together a capital projects budget for you, a true what equipment the city has and what's needed. And we've said that during each year, you should be funding a portion of those capital assets. So you're essentially taking 1 year's depreciation worth of the asset and you're putting it into capital projects fund so that you're saving for future purchases. It's a wise way to keep your capital asset purchases purchased when they need them and have the savings to do it. City Hall operating costs for the past 2 years have been spent out of available cash. So all of these costs have been running through your City Hall operating fund, and they haven't been charged to the appropriate departments, nor have they been funded. So that's a new cost to all your departments this year because we're using actual budget this year to pay for those costs as opposed to available cash. And all amounts that you see for rent or utilities are significant estimates. We have not received viable, accurate information from RVTA on what your rent or utilities are for any department. So just in general, I wanted to just give you highlights of each fund before we start going through by department. So overall highlights of the general fund, you'll see that revenues, the budget's increased $1.2 million. When you look at that first page, at that cover page, it looks like we're budgeting taxes lower than the prior year. And you think, well, we didn't decrease taxes. The mayor told you it's a zero increase real estate tax budget. The reason is because you've always budgeted a $2 million TRAN under taxes. A TRAN isn't taxes. And proper accounting for a tax revenue anticipation note. The proper accounting for a TRAN is not to put it through revenue and expenditures. It's a short-term liability. It doesn't hit either category. So it's been removed from taxes. And that's why you see the decrease in that category. The other significant change in revenue that you'll see is that other federal from ARPA revenue is significantly increased. Couple reasons that we've done that. First, I told you that we put a capital plan together. And we said, okay, if you are truly going to have the savings to purchase the equipment when you need it, then there's this beginning balance that hasn't been funded all along. So what do we need to do to get you in a place, a one-time place of where you should have the savings to purchase that equipment when it's needed? And so you have this revenue loss calculation through ARPA that you've approved, and we've taken that into the general fund to use for general fund expenses. And then the budget that falls out, we're recommending be put into the capital projects fund so that you start on a solid footing in your capital projects fund to fund the future capital purchases. I told you that cash hadn't been reconciled in a good 2 years. And when I did that, I found that your debt service has been underfunded by over $1 million in the last 2 years. So what that means is that you've paid your debt service, but what you've done is you've in essence borrowed money from other funds to do that. Well, that has to be reimbursed. So that too is included in money that is coming through revenue loss and then transferred into the debt service fund to cover those underfunding situations. The main reason for that underfunding is that you had anticipated that RVTA would be paying a portion of your debt for the last 2 years, and that was stopped. And you never went back and amended those budgets and actually moved the cash over to fund that difference in your debt service. The other significant difference is that other local under revenues, you'll see that went from 300,000 to zero. That's because that was RVTA's portion of the pensions that were to be, that were paid to you in the past. And of course, they're not going to be part of your pension plan in 2023. All other revenues have been budgeted relatively conservatively. Now expenditures. I wanted to just tell you a couple of assumptions that we used in developing the expenditure numbers. That might take some of your questions away from every department then. So a couple assumptions that I found industry-wide, all the finance directors have been talking and we're all kind of using in our budgets, are that gas and oil are up 17% from your 2022 figures. Everybody's anticipating a 17% increase. Electricity, everybody is including a 45% increase for electricity costs. The salaries in your budget have been increased in accordance with the union contracts. All other employees are presented with a 3% increase in their wages. Supplemental to the package, the binder that you got, today you were sent a schedule, and that schedule shows you, if you take the 2022 budgets by department and remove the allocation, the City Hall allocation, and remove the capital purchase funding, where you would be with your budgets. So I wanted to show you kind of, we took those pieces out that we've changed this year, where the budgets would stand. And you can see that there's a few significant items. One is your debt service. And as I said, you underfunded your debt service by over $1 million in the last couple of years, so that's being paid in. Also, you'll see a $2 million transfer to capital projects, which I just told you is the beginning balance or the savings that should have taken place to fund your capital projects in the future. And the TRAN, the tax revenue anticipation note payback, was included in expenses in the past, and we removed that. Yes, it's just not accounted for in the budget that way. Right, right. If we need it, we would take it out. Yes. Yes, yes. So that was the general comments with respect to the general fund. Capital projects fund highlights, again, you're going to see transfers in from the general fund, from other funds to fund those capital projects. On the last 2 pages of your binder, you're going to see all the budget, the projects that the departments are requesting. And in that, the cell that has the green highlight is the year they want to purchase the item. City Hall operating, again, was paid in 21 and 22 with cash reserves. 23, we're allocating those costs out to the general fund departments. All amounts for utilities in City Hall operating are significant estimates. The liquid fuels budget includes $350,000 towards street resurfacing, and liquid fuels is of course restricted to very specific items. The debt service fund, as I mentioned, shows over $1 million revenue over expense. And again, that's because you're transferring in to fund unfunded debt service in prior years. Act 13 shows $200,000 budgeted towards street resurfacing and $175,000 budgeted towards the Basin Street pump station upgrades. And then your pool repair fund, I didn't budget any expenses in the pool repair fund. I was told that council would like to maintain a $50,000 balance, cash balance in that fund, and it is currently at $46,000. So I didn't budget any expenses for 2023.
And then just 2 other items real quick. I know at the beginning we talked about a little bit the page numbers. We apologize. As we were working through the meat of it, we realized we didn't put page numbers on, so we apologize for that. And the print, we went back a few years, I think to 2019, made the print a little smaller, so we apologize for the small print as well. Moving forward, if you want less of the historical, we could increase the print, so we apologize for those 2 items there. And then I'll yield back to President Gilder.
All right, thank you both. Does anybody have any questions on the just initial introduction? Ms. Mealy. You want to put your mic on?
Just a couple of housekeeping things. It would seem like the thing to do next year would be to go legal size. I think the historical information is valuable, but
Mhm.
You could make it larger than making it longer, probably.
Sure, we can do that.
Is it possible to at least get an electronic copy with page numbers?
Sure.
Is it possible to at least get an electronic copy with page numbers? Because that's going to make the whole process of duking it out over the budget a whole lot easier. Yes, that was just housekeeping. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Any other questions or comments from other members before we go through our income estimates? Okay, Mayor Slaughter, Tracy, thank you very much for the introduction. We will move to our income estimates. Not sure who wants to, or who's planning to present our income estimates between. Yeah, no worries. Gotcha. No worries.
If I can interrupt with one other small thing that we
Yes.
usually historically have done for the benefit of any members of the public, also for the benefit of viewers, we try to project the data on the screen so that people who are watching remotely or people who are watching here in the room can see the numbers that we're talking about. I'm sure there's enough hyperbole out there about our budget without it actually not being physically available to people.
That's a good point.
Sean, I could send this to you, or unless one of them were doing the same thing. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me dig it up. I will send that to you, Sean. Here, give me a second. I can find it. I saved it. Sean, send me an email.
And Tracy or Derek, if I can clarify one other small thing, we did make all of our appropriate debt payments last year. We simply did not make them out of the appropriate lines, correct? And we didn't go back and rectify the budget to match those, right?
That is correct. The
That
debt
was my
payments were
recollection,
made.
that we were unable to come to a decision about exactly where the money was going to come from. And then I believe that when we finally did, it never became official, but yes. Just to be clear and for the record, all debt payments have been made for the last 2 years. They simply were not then rectified with the budget that we had passed. And that was because, yes, we had high hopes that RBT was going to be paying that money.
Sean, I just sent that to you. You want to take a minute? Okay. Yeah, give it another minute. He's logging in. We'll pull it up. All right. Thank you, Sean. Tracy, I will turn it over to you for a review of the income estimates.
Very good. Starting at the top, the very beginning section is taxes. And with respect to real estate taxes, the millage has been kept the same, but the assessed value decreased a little bit for 2023. So what, and it's based on 92% collections. That's what you've historically used as your collection percentage. So it's reported at base under current, and then the prior was kept uniform with the prior year. Wage taxes remain the same, and local services taxes remain the same based on estimates from the Treasurer's Department. Those appear reasonable. Business privilege taxes. We increased the budget. Oh, I'm sorry. We decreased the budget based on, sorry, like you have trouble looking at your numbers, I'm having the same. So give me a second to highlight these columns so I can talk. Okay, so business privilege taxes are coming in over budget for 2022. So we increased the budget slightly for 2023, anticipating an increase, but not quite as high as your actuals for 2022. Realty transfer taxes, again, came in pretty high for 2022. We're projecting almost 600,000, but kept the budget uniform with last year. As you're aware, the market took off this year and is now slowing, so we didn't want to budget too high for that. And both interest and penalties and discounts were kept in line with historical averages, bringing you to what appears to be a net decrease in taxes from the prior year budget. But again, that's because the tax revenue anticipation note was removed. Licenses and permits were previously budgeted at 830,000. We're proposing 835, which is just a slight increase. No real changes in those amounts. Fines and forfeits, we did bring those down. When I looked at the trends for the past 4 years, those amounts have been decreasing every year. So I decreased the budget in accordance with the trends of the last 4 years. Interest, that's always good. That's good news this year. So interest has skyrocketed with the change in the federal rates. The treasurer has invested to the extent allowed for governments. The treasurer has invested your excess funds in higher interest bearing accounts. So I did pick up, what I did was I took September's return and then just annualized that for the rest of the year. It may even come higher because of the increase in the Fed rates that just happened.
Real quick, does anybody have any questions on any of the first few pages? I think these are just kind of like general categories before we really get into individual departmental earnings. Does anybody have any comments or questions on anything? Mr. Pelizzi?
Hi.
Hi.
So real quick, going back to page 2, I see that for the year 2022, we had a line for mechanical devices tax. After the proposed year 2023, that 32,700 is now not.
Looks like it was deleted. That should be 32,700. It must have been deleted in the process.
So we should assume that 32,700 is going to be there.
Yes.
And then move it,
Yes.
and then just add that into total
Yes.
sums at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions related to the first couple of pages on the revenue side? Okay. Back to departmental earnings. Thank you.
Okay, lots of departmental earnings. So starting at the very top, you're obviously not getting any more indirect cost reimbursements from the Transportation Authority. Down to recreation and program income, I budgeted about the same as that you've received in the past couple of years. Most of these I used historical trends. Pool admissions were budgeted at 25,000 last year. You only had got 4,400, but as you're aware, the pool wasn't open. So we are budgeting for the pool to be open the full time next year. Rescue operation fees historically have been a little bit higher than the prior year budget, so I increased the budget for the current year. Towing fees, I kept the same. Again, historically, that makes sense. Mulch recycling is based on the average of the past year. Rental inspections appeared to be under budgeted in the past, so I increased that to be in line with historical averages. Special events was always budgeted relatively high, and I didn't see any any revenues to support that, so I decreased that budget to make it more reasonable. And then the next couple categories, they're called miscellaneous. I went through each of these to look at the types of items that were being reported in each and adjusted the budget to be more in line with the types of revenues that are being received. Bowman naming field rights, that contract is still in place, so that was kept at 30,500. And then you do get a health insurance reimbursement every year from your health insurance provider. Again, budgeted conservatively, you did receive 323,000 during 2022. In total, that brings your budget from $617,000 last year to $509 this year.
Do you have any members of council have any comments, questions on departmental earnings? Mrs. Katz?
Mayor, special events. I really would like to see that outsourced and not part of the city. We obviously have trouble maintaining that, getting funding it. And if we want to do special events, maybe we can outsource that somehow.
We can explore it. You mean, you're talking every single special event that we do?
Well, you know, there's something, when you stop and think about trying to bring the revenue in to support some of the events, it gets very high. And it's also, we're finding it difficult, as you hear from other people, to get the people to work, to volunteer for the projects. Our moneymakers really are Homemade Days and Williamsport Welcomes the World, which from what I understand, and I don't know if this is in the budget because we never saw figures from the rec department on Williamsport Welcomes the World, that the chamber was handling some of the finance of that. And, and in the past, we were responsible, and that was one of our biggest money makers.
Sure, we can look into that, the special events that we do, and get some costs possibly to see what it would be to.
I think what I'm saying is, I don't think, we're putting the rec department and special events together. And, I don't know if you have the specialty that's required of somebody to do special events.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that
But
out.
yeah, it's something we can look into. Yes, we can check it out and see. And if there's something out there that's reasonable, look into it. So, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions related to the departmental earnings? Okay, continue on.
The next section is state grants. You can see that all of them have been the first two, beverage license tax and public utility tax, are budgeted consistent with the prior year. And then your pension contribution, the state aid that you get towards your pension, was increased in accordance with the information that was given to us by your actuaries. Under grants, other payment in lieu of taxes remains the same, as does the administrative cost reimbursements from tax collection office. And your SRO grant, your school resource officer grant, was increased because you have 2 officers now in the school rather than 1. So that was increased in accordance with the contract. And then down below, under other, so this is where your money from ARPA, your revenue loss money from ARPA is coming in. The 2.06 million That is again, the amount that we are saying needs to be put into the capital projects fund to get your savings where they need to be to institute a true capital projects plan. The 1.96 above consists of two pieces. 1 million of it is your debt funding. So the debt funding that's going to be transferred over to the debt service fund. And then the other 960,000 is consistent with the prior year, what you took from lost revenue and into your general fund budget.
Does anybody have any comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
Well, just one, I mean, it would seem as though if we're going to bother to maintain those two lines, then we should differentiate between the two of them. They're both called out for lost revenue. B, if we took the 960 out of the lower one last year, then shouldn't the lower one this year show 1.96 million and the upper line, the new line, show the transfer to the capital?
I just wanted to show it separately, just so we could talk about what it looked like. You're
Okay.
right, in the system, it'll be one line.
Okay. all
I
right.
just wanted to differentiate between those two lines so you
Got it,
understood
okay.
why that was
So-
coming out.
So it's not
yes.
going to show up as. two
Right, it
lines
would
generally.
not show in the general ledger, it would be one line, correct?
Okay, understood, then yeah, that, right. We can discuss the particulars of that later, unless we want to discuss it now, but that's a fine way to show it if that's not the way it's gonna look in the long run. Okay.
Any other comments or questions related to any of the remaining pages related to revenue? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to general government. I think we have the mayor's office this evening. Turn it over to Mayor Slaughter.
Good evening again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council and administration. What you have for the mayor's office, salaries, which my salary is set by ordinance. And then, as Tracy noted, 3% for that wills, FICA, life insurance, workers' comp, pensions, health insurance. The second, their travel, that should say professional development, apologies there. Communications, hearings and litigation, office rent, city hall operating allocation, dues and subscriptions, SPCA, general office supplies, and support equipment for a total proposed of $284,225.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Any comments or questions related to the mayor's budget? Ms. Mealy?
Just two things, Derek. Your salary showed an increase in the salary budget, in the salary detail. Is that inaccurate?
No, that's accurate. For 2023, it goes up by whatever,
Oh, okay.
whatever it was
Got it,
set
got
by
it.
ordinance.
Okay, sorry, yeah, you said it was set
Yeah.
by ordinance, when I was like, I don't remember. Well,
Yep.
I'm just not aware of it one way or the other side there.
Yeah.
And then, what's the support equipment?
That is computers. So talking to Chris Black, we use our computers pretty hard. Actually, Janice Holmes today was acting up and they're basically about shot. So that is what that was for us for new laptops moving forward.
Makes sense. Okay. And I know you explained this once already, Tracy, but give it to me again, the difference between office rent and the city hall operating allocation.
Certainly, certainly. So office rent is, if you recall, council approved a lease with RVTA.
Mhm.
It was effective September of last year, but I'm not sure when you approved it. I apologize for that. But so that is recorded as rent in each department based on square footage, based on the lease. However, RVTA has now come back to us and said they think that those square footages could be inaccurate and they're reworking that for us. But the rent in there is what is currently being charged by RVTA.
Got it.
Then City Hall operating is an allocation of all the costs of old City Hall,
Uh-huh.
and then all the common costs of current City Hall. So think cleaning,
Right,
right?
and that wraps in
Right.
all city buildings, not
Yes,
just.
yes.
Okay, got it,
Right. And then your IT department,
right,
okay? And then we've taken those costs and we've allocated IT out to every department
right.
based on the number of computers they have.
Okay.
And we've allocated the city hall facilities piece based on square footage.
Okay, got it. That sounds like it took a while. Okay, it just sounds like that must have been a beast of a calculation to accomplish. But anyway, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Biter.
So allocating IT based upon computers, you're using nothing else, just strictly how many computers they have?
Yep, yes, that's how I've seen it done at other municipalities.
That's interesting. I would think that certain departments would demand a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
even though they would have
Usage
fewer
of
or
it.
less computers, phones.
If we had a time study
like
to
that.
follow, that might be something to use, but for lack of any other information at this point, that's what we've chosen to use.
And is it $2,000 per computer, or what is the number that you're using to arrive at that figure?
That may take me a few minutes to
That's
find
fine.
for you.
And we actually have discussed the time study because other cities have done that, and it gives you a more accurate depiction of things like IT, things of that nature. And so wage study. So we've discussed a time study and a wage study both potentially moving forward. When I was out in PML, we talked about that. So could be something that we could have discussions about moving forward if we want. I think it does give us obviously good data, both a time study and a wage study to back up numbers. Now we're starting to obviously move in the right direction. So I think that could be prudent moving forward.
Councilman Biter, I do not have the allocation spreadsheet with me. I'll provide that to you later if that's okay.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Ms. Mealy.
Just as a follow-up question on that, the allocation. I know in discussions, especially with the police department, I've been under the impression that the police department has a really heavy IT need. And then a large chunk of that is due not so much to PCs as to new body worn cameras, all sorts of moving parts within the police department that aren't necessarily just computers, but are also require a heavy, IT input. Was that part of this?
Body cameras served by internal IT or? Yeah, so that it was just done by PC.
Okay, I guess, I mean, if we're after an accurate picture, which, right, the time study will accomplish, but the secondary, right, I think in my very limited understanding of the subject, it seems as though it looked as though the police department was probably providing a much larger share than most of the other departments, just based on the variety of IT items that they had going on. So without a time study, it might be worthwhile to at least weight those items to somehow or another within the allocation process. You know what I mean?
Kind of another piggyback question on that, and it's more related to the strategy with the IT, putting it in the capital projects. No, sorry, City Hall operating, excuse me. So why just IT? I mean, it would seem to me under that theory, finance, human resources, I mean, there's multiple departments that have tentacles and support every aspect of the city. Why just IT? Was there any rationale, or is this just a starting point, or?
When you look at the types of services that are recommended under government accounting standards to be reported in an internal service fund, they recommend things like IT because they're very, they're purchasing things that apply to everyone. And they're purchasing big things that apply to everyone, like a server for the city is a huge purchase. And so those costs need to be allocated out to every department, where finance is buying pens, right? So the other types of departments they sometimes consider are like if you have a garage that services all of your different cars for all of your different departments, they sometimes say to put that into internal service funds. So it's just a choice as to what makes sense in terms of purchasing and how it gets allocated.
Gotcha. Thank you. That makes some sense. I appreciate it. Any other comments or questions, Mrs. Katz?
Mayor, under expenditures, business and grant development, there really is nothing since when, 2020. Is that being placed elsewhere?
No, actually, that was $100, and I really wasn't sure coming in what business and grants development really was. And so we do a lot of our grant, when we write grants, we use obviously Delta and Keller. And so I saw that $100 there and I just didn't know historically really
It just
what
doesn't
that was.
feel right or look
Yeah,
right.
so we left it there just because in 2020 it was $100. But yeah, I couldn't really, yeah,
I didn't
we didn't really,
yeah.
so that's just nothing.
If I recall, I think we have our consultants under the planning area, correct?
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah. So
so
we don't, there's
they're
no
covered.
business and grants development needed from my
I
office.
just questioned the line item there.
Yeah, it's,
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Mayor Slaughter. We will move on to the Department of Public Works. Welcome up, Mr. Livermore. Find the page here.
Good evening, members of council. So the first one is the Office of Directors, which is salaries, FICA, life insurance, workers' comp, pensions, health insurance, trainings, office, rental, city hall, contract services, general office supplies, support, equipment, and telephones, for a total of $309,797.
Any comments or questions for the Streets and Parks Office of the Director? Page.
I'm not trying to be smart, but I can't, where are we at? Can somebody give me a
According to your
general?
logic, if I wrote my page numbers correctly, we're
Yeah.
on page 25.
25. Thank you.
We're at least in
And
that
I
area.
promise I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
It would be Department 2201, and it says Office of Director at the top of the page,
22.
2201.
It's a little better than halfway back, John.
I got you.
Maybe three-quarters of the way
Okay,
back.
thank you.
Was my number right?
Yeah, my number was right.
Well,
Yours,
did our numbers
yeah.
match? Any, so now that you're on the right page, John, any comments or questions related to the Office of the Director? Okay, on to the next page.
Page 26. Next one, streets and parks, traffic control, 2270. This is salaries, overtime, FICA, life insurance, workers' comp, pensions, health insurance, purchases for other services, which is water and sewer, lights and power, street lighting, heat, beltway lighting, trash removal, contract services, recycling programs, supplies and materials, gas and oil, protective clothing, uniforms, supplies and materials, COVID-19 supplies, storm sewer materials, other department expenditures, paint, traffic control, hand tools, vehicle repair, traffic signal repair, other equipment repairs, facility maintenance, Bowman Field maintenance, repairs for radio, street resurfacing, reconstruction, brick street resurfacing, reconstruction, street resurfacing, reconstruction of liquid fuels, and equipment for a total of $2,597,134.
Are there any questions or comments for the Streets and Parks and Traffic Control? Mr. Allison?
The recycling is increasing this year. What part of that program is causing that?
So the recycling line item
Oh,
is
okay.
increasing. What's driving the increase?
So in years past, that's only enough to do two grindings, and we need to do about 3 a year. I'm due for one now and I gotta wait.
Okay,
So I'm anticipating 3 grinds, which is roughly around $12,000 a grind.
okay, makes sense.
Mr. Mackey?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a budget session if I didn't ask about the brick streets. If I remember correctly, there was a petition circling. Do we have a plan for the brick streets? And if not, I think we need to figure one out. I mean, we've been budgeting $50,000 for the brick streets since I've been on council, and it doesn't appear that we've used any of it since maybe 2019.
I think we've taken it out the past couple. of
Taking it
years.
out, yeah, okay.
Right.
So are we, yeah, so that's something that we need to,
So I think to Mr. Mackey's point, so you referenced the petition. I
Yeah.
know we've taken it out the past couple of years. I know that I'm struggling to remember what happened, but earlier in the year, something had come up related to the brick streets. What direction is the administration, I guess, I mean, or is that the direction we're planning to go? Where are we going to continue to use them, keep up with them? Has anything, I guess, what are you hearing?
One thing we need to research, and probably with Solicitor White, it was mentioned that there might be that they might have to remain a brick street. So I don't know
Okay.
if that was formalized anywhere in yesteryear or not.
Okay.
I have not seen anything personally, so we'll look into that. Obviously, the folks that live on the brick street via the petition that was handed out are pretty passionate. And so working with Scott, it's an undertaking. It's not, maintaining brick streets are, they're brick streets, so it's not easy. However, having said that, and the folks, none of them were saying we bought our house because of the brick street, the character, the value that it brings to the neighborhood and to their personal properties. And so working with Scott, we want to try to the best maintain, get the 50,000 back in, maintain the brick streets. But some of the areas are in, dire need of some upgrades, but I'll let.
So I've had a conversation with one of the alleys, and I can't remember which one is up by Confusion Corner. It needs repaired. However, I'm struggling to find contractors that even want to touch it for even a quarter of what we have in there. So, I mean, it's because of the amount of work that goes into repairing a brick street back to a brick street. It's a full depth reconstruct with concrete underneath, sand, and then relay the bricks. No one wants to touch it for under 100 grand for just an alley. So it's very difficult and expensive to maintain those, but.
Are we running into that issue with regular streets though? Or is that not as much of an issue on the regular
No,
streets?
that's not as much because, with the liquid fuels, we can do a lot of our own paving and then hire a paving contractor out. And it's cheaper to fix potholes, but which is a lot around, but it's easier, it's cheaper and easier, and I can get there quicker, get the problem solved quicker than I can without ripping the brick street up or having somebody come in, because in order to do a patch 8x8, I still have to dig down and then tie back into all the concrete. It's a couple weeks process just to fix something small.
Gotcha. Related to the petition, do we have any idea of, I guess, how many signatures were on it? I mean, for the particular neighborhood it came from, do we have any kind of representation? Is it?
I can speak to it a little bit. It came from the rural Ave neighborhood within the city, obviously. And I would imagine from looking at it, it was a few months ago, but there were over 100 signatures on that, which is just about every house.
Yeah, that's most
on
of the
block
street.
there.
Yeah.
And I don't recall if there were any from Fifth Ave, which heads south when you get to the west end of rural Ave.
Yep.
Speaking of brick streets as well, and this is a curiosity question, should we undertake a major project with those brick streets? Is that something that we would be wise enough to coordinate with the water authority and UGI? So that way any underground work was done in conjunction with the resurfacing? Because this is not just something where I agree, we can't just go out and do it and then cut into it within a year.
No, it would be wise to do the substructure work before, if we have plans to do this street or whatever street, brick street, to get with the water authority and UGI to make sure everything is done substructure before we spend the money to fix the street the right way.
Oh,
Mr. Mackey, you originally had the floor. We kind of got off on a tangent. We can then go to Mrs.
Well,
Gads and Ms. Mealy.
I mean, a couple of thoughts. Again, you can twist my arm maybe for rural Ave, but when we start talking about an alley at Confusion Corner, when we start talking about, I believe there is a small section of Brick Street in Newberry. Am I correct? Fifth Avenue, I sometimes fail to see the historic value in those streets. I somewhat fail to see the historic value in Royal Avenue, but again, I don't live on that street. And shame on me for not looking into that petition a little bit more, but yes, there were 100 signatures on it. Were every single one of those signatures from people who actually live on rural, or were they neighbors who maybe lived a couple houses off of rural, that to me would be information that I think would be helpful to have.
Yeah, I think it was a combination.
Yeah.
Mainly rural. I think there were a few on First Ave, maybe Second Ave. But I can share I think everybody, anyway, it's been a little bit, it's been a month or two since I've looked at it, but I did meet with a few of them and, you know, they were passionate, but I think majority of the signatures were rural Ave folks, but there were some cross-section streets as well. Wasn't 100% rural Ave.
Okay.
So, but again, yes, we would, you know, if we were to undertake a reconstruction, clearly we wouldn't put that type of money into it without working with UGI, the Water Authority. Obviously, we would coordinate everything. There's no way we'd put a substantial amount of money into a brick street reconstruction and then tear it back up 6 months later. So, I mean, and I didn't see anything from the Newberry section, Wayne Avenue, I believe it is, or Fifth Ave for that matter. I don't know if there are any signatures from Fifth Ave. I'm not remembering any off the top of my head. And then that little alley that's up there off of Hepburn there before Confusing Corner. So I don't think I saw anything from that area either. So primarily it was rural Ave, and you know, we can, you know, circle back around maybe and have a conversation. But to his point, it's historically always been 50,000. That's nowhere near enough to truly do it if we want to upkeep. But you know, if it's something we need to do or have to do, we can talk to solicitors and see if there is anything that's within the city that has memorialized that.
I would also be interested to know if we're talking about a significant amount of money, what other projects do we spend a significant amount of money on that benefit such a very small section of the city? That would, again, I have a hard time dumping a ton of money into a street that only benefits 100 people. And this is a city of almost, what, 27,000 people?
Yes,
So,
sure.
yeah, that's just, again, just my initial thoughts when I hear huge undertaking, lots of money.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Mrs. Katz and then Ms. Mealy.
Just a quick question, Scott, on Wayne Avenue in Newberry, the Brick Street there, don't they also have a drainage problem? They did in the past. I don't know if they still do because of the bricks.
I'll have to check in on that. I don't know if we have gotten any calls recently about it. I mean, right now, if it's going to be a problem, it's going to be a problem right now.
It's going to be a problem now because in a few years ago, there was a problem there.
Yeah.
Obviously, and they kept on working on trying to fix it. And I agree with John, the 50,000, that doesn't even scratch the surface. Are you still stockpiling bricks though, somewhere?
I still got,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
I have a bunch.
You Get a bunch, okay.
Ms. Mealy, you had a question.
Sure. So just so I'm understanding, Scott, because somehow I did not know this about Brick Street construction. Are all the city's original brick streets underlaid by cement?
Under what?
Is there cement under all of the city's original brick streets?
If they're not, there should be, and that's the way it's got to go back in for the code, so.
I mean, but that's the way that we would have constructed them even back like when they paved 4th Street with brick.
I haven't been around the city while they were have tearing one up to see if that's what's actually under them, but that's what's supposed to be under them in order to handle the amount of traffic we have now.
Huh, interesting. That's something that makes sense. Well, a couple of real weird small notes, but that little alley off between Hepburn Street and Market is going to get a whole lot more traffic if we pave it. Just going to put that out there
Yeah.
because everybody avoids it because it's slick when it snows and when it rains. You know what I mean? Like it is currently a very low traffic area, I think, because it's brick. And if we improve the surface, then I can guarantee you that's going to become a pretty major thoroughfare because there are a lot of people who want to get in that area, but I won't drive, you know, but anyway, there's just something to consider. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I was about to say, that really should be paved. And then I was like, oh my God, it's going to drive those people crazy if we pave that alley. But so just something to put out there. In terms of the other brick streets, they are protected by ordinance. I'm not certain if we're required by ordinance to put money into maintaining them. I would assume that we probably are. But if we in the long term are looking to do anything like reconstructing brick streets without the brick, we're going to need to first go through the ordinance to deal with it. I am generally speaking a fan of brick streets. I think they do add to the character of the neighborhood. I do think that unfortunately, for whatever reason, most of the brick streets left in the city are not in neighborhoods that, Rural Ave being one exception, and potentially Wayne Avenue, but the whole stretch there down around Fifth Street. While I think it could be exceptionally cool right now, it's not really adding much to anything, and I don't know what we do about that. But those are also probably the worst, with the exception of that alley on Hepburn Street. Those are probably the worst ones in the city, and would require the most money to bring them back to anything. So it's a discussion that we need to have. But I certainly think that if we have a high value brick street and a high value in a neighborhood where it's really making the character of the neighborhood, we should be working hard to at least fund the sort of funding that we need to take care of that. And the underlayment with cement does make it a tougher argument because you can't just pull it out and fix stuff. But it's still, I think we need to pay attention to our neighborhoods and try to see if we can work with them there. So I'll support the 50,000 in this year's budget, and I think, John, that it has to be there. So unless we're going to repeal the ordinance between now and January. So and that's all. And the one other point that I would make, John, is that we do actually, I think, pretty routinely spend a decent chunk of city change on something that benefits a relatively small number of city users. Your ball fields in Brandon Park are one example. The mountain bike course that we're talking about in Shaw will be another. None of that is necessarily bad money. I'm not a fan of the ball fields, but whichever. It's always a user base that's relatively limited, but an asset that we hope will then attract other people to a given neighborhood, to a given activity, whatever, right? So you're always sort of looking to balance that. Does the brick on Rural Avenue add character, not just to Rural Avenue, but to the neighborhood in general, and add value? I would posit that it probably does, in much the same way that we're hoping that the users that we will attract to Shaw Place with a spray park and or a bike track will add character, will add life to that neighborhood, right? Even if not everybody is using it. So just
So we can then start keeping track of the amount of people who play baseball at Brandon Park as opposed to the amount of people who drive specifically to Rural Avenue to take a walk down the brick streets. And then we can see,
might not be a bad idea.
and then we
I'm
can,
guessing you do have a lot of people who are walking in that neighborhood specific to the character of the neighborhood.
okay.
I know that I choose to. I can't speak for others, but and I see a lot of foot traffic down that street. Yes. So I'm just right. It's not necessarily about evaluating your users, but I am saying if you are, I think you're looking at, we often spend a decent chunk of change to satisfy a relatively small user base. And so I don't know that we're making a different choice here than we would be with the ball fields, for instance.
I would strongly disagree with that sentiment, but.
And
Go ahead, Scott. Sorry. Yeah.
sorry, so Solicitor White did just he pulled the ordinance up, so it is maintaining future. However, as to Councilwoman Mealy's point, council could repeal. And so he just pulled it up just now.
And the list, it's Article 902, and there is a list of which streets. And I would imagine, and seeing that there's been a number of ordinances passed over the last 30 years amending that list, I would suspect then that if council wanted to do something differently, whether that's remove a street that's itemized on this list or repeal certain provisions of this ordinance, it has the power to do so at any point.
It would be helpful if we could you email us that ordinance, please? Thank you.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. Having fun yet, Scott?
I'll let you know in 20 minutes.
All right, so my question for you is open field maintenance.
Yep.
I see the amount that we previously dedicated for Bowman Field maintenance was $25,000. It's now doubled to $50,000. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so there's Bowman Field maintenance, which is the maintenance on the facility that we do in our Streets and Parks Department. And there's another 25,000 that has to be paid out to MLB every year I guess it's part of their agreement.
Yeah, the lease.
For that agreement we just voted on a couple of weeks ago.
So it's something, it's like, I'd need at least 25,000 to change the light bulbs and just the smaller stuff. But everything that's involved in the park.
Okay.
Plus that was missed last year because it was in there for 25,000, so I couldn't spend any of that. So I had to use my facility maintenance to try to cover me through the season just to fix some of the stuff at Bowman, because I didn't have that 25,000 to be able to touch because that was allocated for MLB.
Okay.
So that's why it's this year double. So I have the money to do the work.
I appreciate that. So then I guess my next question then would be directed toward the mayor and to Tracy. It's because I see, from what I can see on the line items, the only revenue we're getting out of Bowman Field is the $30,500 for the naming rights. So where would the other revenue that the city's generating from Bowman from the lease with the cross cutters, or where would that be shown as far as revenue? Do we have an approximate number on what that number would be?
I don't remember. I ran a bunch of numbers because we get Williamsport High School plays there, Bishop Newman, a bunch of high schools and colleges pay to play there. And I know we still take a hit as a city for them to do so. And I don't have that numbers in front of me at this time.
Yeah. We'll have to look into that and get back to you. We didn't.
I appreciate, I'm
Yeah,
just
but,
curious because I see that, we've got $50,000 in Bowman Field maintenance expenditures, but it's only making us $30,000 in revenue. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Katz.
To keep on addressing that, we were supposed to raise the permits, what we were charging people. I don't remember, did that get lost in the weeds somewheres and we never did address it?
Nope. No, that was, it was if I remember right, it used to be $500 to rent. Now we bumped it up for $100 for the schools to pay for that. Now on top of the extra costs if they want the video board.
Right,
So
right.
it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be like $1,075 to play a game there is what it comes out to. But cutters will get a cut of that for the video board. And then, the school has to pay just to play on that field $600.
It was the different, now I recall, it's the difference of, you have a choice of what you want to use. And we're still losing money,
And
which
A little bit.
is kind of,
yeah, we actually, Scott and I just met with the cross cutters to that exact point, because we're considering raising it again this year. Because if you look at like the Altoona Curve or the State College Spike, their field is not nearly as nice as Bowman Field, and they charge double or triple.
It's like $2,000.
What we charge. And so, we could easily increase that fee and it be justified. So we met with the cross cutters about that. Because obviously the field continues to get improved upon with the Major League game and all of that. And it would increase our revenue a little bit. Yeah, so we're looking at, we raised it this year, and it's probably going to get raised again next year because we're still significantly under.
we have
what
been.
Whoa,
Sorry. That me.
that's you're good.
All right, so we're still significantly under what other areas charge. So most likely we'll be coming to council. We just met with them. We're going to go over with the Bowman Field Commission and then bring it to council for further discussion.
We've talked about this for several years and how we have been losing. And now that MLB takes care of the field, anybody would give their IT to play ball on that field. And we should incorporate
Right.
the cost of that. We
I
really should.
agree. I mean, I fully agree. And it's a professional baseball field.
Yeah,
So if you're going to
exactly.
go play on the Phillies, if you're going to go play at Citizens Bank, you're not going to do that. But and hypothetically, they would charge you a lot of money.
Exactly.
So you're playing on the Major League Baseball field. So we should, not that we're going to, charge them out that much, but a little bit, we could increase.
We have to at least break even and make a couple of bucks.
Right. And so we can drill down to Councilman Pelizzi's point to see where that's going.
I appreciate it. I'm just looking at
dollars and cents point to make sure that what we have are revenue generating assets and not liabilities. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr.
I
Allison?
just have one final one on the lighting. Do we have a plan to spend the 62,000 this year?
The lighting?
Street lighting?
Yeah, the street lighting.
No, that was another, you remember that one, Tracy?
Or is that just a,
So based on what I think Tracy, you had mentioned, I think electrical is going up planned 45%. So, and I think that number generally that we've budgeted, it's a little conservative as in we would ideally come in under budget. So that's probably, I'm guessing where that's coming
well,
from.
we budgeted 62 in 2022 and
Oh,
spent 21, well, ended up spending 28,000, maybe, with the rest of the year. And I thought some of that goes to repairs and that kind of thing as well, maintenance.
Yeah, it's to,
LED switching, perhaps?
pardon me,
Was some of it for switching to LEDs? on
Yeah,
some of our older
yeah.
units?
buy some new LED heads.
Right.
Plus the cost of the increase in the electric is run there through
Okay.
there as well.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
Are the contract services, Scott? Recycle program is the grinding, correct? But
Contract services, 40,000, that is going to be for cleaning service.
okay, got it. So the streets department puts the bill for all of that, or is that spread out amongst?
No, that is also for Bauer disposal too. Let's split a little bit in there.
Okay.
For our garbage truck city, and then we have choice carpet cleaning. that comes-
Got it. So that's choice carpet, but you're only footing the bill for the streets and parks department, correct?
Streets and parks.
Okay.
And yeah, we have to,
And you're not paying for the city for the cleaning here as well, correct, out of that one?
Correct, because there was no rent being allocated. to him.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
he did not take he took a portion of IT, but not a portion of city hall operating.
Okay,
Yes.
got
Just so
it.
we know.
So that is the trash disposal throughout the city
Mhm.
and cleaning at streets and parks?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And the capital, I'm actually a little surprised. Talk to me about your zeroed out equipment expenditures for this year. I'm not seeing a lot of money being spent on equipment, despite what I've heard a fair amount of equipment being discussed in the Streets and Parks Department. And also not seeing a lot of money transferred out to capital projects for future expenditures. And,
So Scott's capital projects were split among multiple departments.
okay,
So this is just the streets part
Right.
of the capital.
understood. But even
project.
then, looking back through other departments, I'm not seeing a ton of money. but-
So if you look at the last two pages of your binder, this shows every department so
Right.
that you'll see that there are, recreation is partly his, but there's also parks and streets and flood that are all part of what he manages.
Yeah,
So it's broken into those pieces.
right, yeah.
Oh, this is streets. The reason for that is most of his vehicles in streets are paid for through liquid fuels.
Okay.
So they're
alright,
not part of what the city's funding from the general fund.
Got it. So we are not acquiring any equipment in the streets department this year.
So if you-
Or we are acquiring it through liquid fuels and that's in the liquid fuels budget, you're telling me? Because I know there had also been some discussion of potential grants. I don't know. I was just kind of trying to see.
Yeah, so on the very last page of your book, it'll say Department 2270 Streets. And there are two vehicles being proposed to be purchased out of the Streets Department. They are a Streets and Parks Transport Vehicle and a city transport vehicle. The green highlight is in the year of purchase, so that's 2023 that you would anticipate purchasing those.
Okay.
And the city transport vehicle was the one we had.
Well, and a hillsider, but that's Parks Department, correct?
That's
Or flood control, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The city transport vehicle, our thought there was that was be the one that we'd share amongst city council, everybody. If we need to go to professional development or anything like that, it would be a vehicle for all of us to use.
Mhm. Yeah, understood. So, got it. So that is funding, that's equipment that we are acquiring then in the 2023 budget year. I'm just, sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the new way of showing all this money moving around, so.
So,
Mhm,
so just in theory,
mhm.
the general fund shouldn't be used for one-time or non-regular purchases.
Right.
So if you buy 3 cars a year, that should go through your general fund budget because that's an operating expense. If you buy a car every 5 years, then you should save for it by putting money into a capital projects fund and purchasing it at the end of 5 years. So for these 2 purchases, looking specifically at these 2 purchases for streets, you should have saved $84,000 to date to purchase those vehicles. And then in 2023, you would save $6,000 because that's 1 year of savings and purchase the vehicles.
Right.
So the proposal is to take $84,000, again, using ARPA, flushing it through the general fund, budget falls out, goes even into capital projects. You have your savings for those through 2022, and then you're only funding the current year depreciation or the current year allocation of that asset out of the operating budget.
Yep.
So that's why you only see 6,000 on his
Right,
budget
right,
for
right.
this year.
Yeah. No, I understand all of that. I'm just used to seeing the equipment still lined out in the budget itself, which is where I'm kind of struggling. for
Right,
some
so
reason.
it's pulling, it's because those are one-time purchases. A general fund shouldn't show anomalies. Like you shouldn't see streets and parks go up 50,000 in 1 year and then back down because they bought a John Deere tractor. That's a capital purchase. It shouldn't be part of operations. So that's why it's pulled out.
Got it. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? All right, continue on.
I think what's in front of you next is 2280.
Yes. Yep.
I might have screwed my papers up some. This is flood control. Salaries, overtime, FICA, life insurance, workman's comp, pensions, health insurance, water and sewer, lights and power, heat, supplies and materials, gas and oil, protective clothing, uniforms, flood control materials, department equipment, vehicle repairs, and other equipment repairs, other department expenditures, flood levy certification, MS4 Chesapeake Bay, PRP, on a grand total of 329,447.
Any comments or questions for the flood control section of the Public Works budget? Mr. Pelisi?
Thank you. Scott, for salaries, how many salary positions does that cover? 2?
2. Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Biter?
Nothing in MS4 or Chesapeake Bay. I know we've got a lot of issue with that, and specifically with water sewer. And I see that we had a one-time expense in 2020 for that. We have nothing from the federal government that we need to satisfy that we're anticipating.
Not to my knowledge.
It's the water.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a resolution a couple weeks ago in regards to a grant. If we get it and matched from the water authority, will be fully covered on our Chesapeake Bay pollution reduction plan. And nothing for MS4.
And we don't need to show anything with that grant specifically in the budget.
Grants are accounted for in a different area.
Correct.
And we haven't received it, correct? We
No.
did receive. Okay, excellent.
Any other Mrs. Katz?
Scott, there's two people working flood control. From what I understand, the hours wise, it's really a three-man job and not a two-man job because of all that's expected for them to do. Am I correct in that area?
It is a 3, maybe 4. Yeah, I mean, we do what we can with the 2, obviously I pull from other departments to help out when needed. But, in midsummer times, a lot of just mowing, and then you have your fall maintenance, which is greasing the stems, checking all the pumps, making sure everything's running. Yeah, so I mean, we are a guy down, yeah. we are.
I don't think people realize the hours that these two men put in the flood control. I mean, it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, there's been years, when you have high water events, they have 300 hours overtime. It's around the clock until it actually gets down to where it needs to be.
But we're satisfied with the 2.
So, yeah.
I know we're budget time here. We shouldn't be talking extra people, but I know the work that's involved at times.
Mr. Pelisi?
Yeah, I just, while we were talking about it, I just did some math real quick based upon the overtime hours and the salaries. And yeah, Scott, that comes out to account Bonnie for about 304, almost 305 hours of overtime annually just between for these two guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work that they do.
Yeah, I think when Wood did their study, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 9. I think they said a levy our size should have 9 full-time. I mean, I know that's not realistic with the budget talks, but just for a point of reference, that's why you're seeing that those large number of overtime hours when we have some type of water event or need the levy attended to, we have 2, and really is a 9, in theory, a 9-person.
That's why I question, because it's the hours these two men put in are astronomical.
Ms. Mealy?
Is it 9 people just for the stretch of the levee in the city or 9 people for the levee in total?
So what Wood did some work for the county, did some man-hour estimates based on everything that the flood control folks are supposed to do by the book we have from the Army Corps. And their man-hour estimates estimated somewhere in the 6 to 9 people range just dedicated to the levee.
But I'm saying the levee
For the
covers.
city, just for the city. yes.
Okay, not the stretch in South Williamsport or.
No,
Old
not in
Lake
South
Cumming or-
Williamsport. Our city levy does extend it into Old Lake Cumming and also into Lowestoft as well.
Okay,
So that's for Old Lycoming City and Loyalsock, or that's just for city proper?
It's for our piece of the levy that does extend just into Lowestock and up into Old Lake Cumming as well.
Okay, so, okay, I got you.
11 and a half miles total in length.
So, yes,
Yeah.
it's for, it covers all 3.
Yeah.
To some degree.
but at least it's not South.
Well, agreed. So speaking of that, there's been, I mean, since I've been on council, and I think even before I was on council, there's been talks of looking at a levy authority. Where is that? I know that's a kind of combination between multiple entities, right? The city, a couple of the other municipalities that surround us, the county. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, so we continue to have ongoing meetings about that between Wood, the county, the city, South, everyone, basically, our water and sanitary authority. And it essentially is coming down to what direction collectively do we want to go in that? Who's going to, if we go to a levy authority or stormwater authority, does it make sense for the Williamsport Municipal Water and Sanitary Authorities to handle it? The Lycoming County Water and Sewer Authority, some combination of both. And so right now, we're still, I guess, in the information gathering phase. Wood has done a number of studies around it and looked at it and has offered some suggestions. Gaz is, I guess, sort of spearheading that process, you could say. And so we meet probably quarterly. Obviously, there's been no definitive direction yet, or I guess, agreement on how we're going to move forward. We all, I think, believe that we do need to move forward clearly with some type of levy authority, particularly once it's the accreditation and recertification process is done so that we don't get back into the same situation again. And so I think right now we all sort of had our individual input. Gaz is collected all of that and putting it together. We'll meet again and then, continue. So hopefully, I would think sooner, it seemed anyway from what I've gleaned from the meetings is that we all know that we need to do some type of authority. What that looks like and who is overseeing that, so to speak, is sort of where we are right now. And so leaning on Wood for their expertise, and Keller's been involved as well, looking at grants and things of that nature from the federal side of things. But so it's, say all that, say it's still an ongoing process and everyone's still involved in that. I think Councilwoman Katz has been to a few of the meetings as well, so.
That's helpful. I mean, it's an undertaking. This entire process has been an undertaking when you have so many municipalities involved. And this isn't really to push any of the individual bodies that are in it more, maybe some would. But it'd be really great when we're sitting here next year, maybe we have some kind of an idea of what that actually might look like, so we can start to plan accordingly. So. Nice.
I agree, and I think with the process that's underway now with the recertification and the risk assessment, a year from now, we'll probably have significantly more information, obviously, including, maybe even have an Army Corps here and they'll be able to discuss as well. Because I'm assuming they'll have some input. John, correct me if I'm wrong, the Army Corps will probably have clearly input on the maintenance, operation and maintenance moving forward too. And it's just one of the things we're going to have to agree on. I mean, it is what it is. Moving forward, and that so we don't get stuck again.
Another thing to point out is the fact that things are looking good for Tom Keller's pushing the federal level for the earmark. So if we get that, it'll buy us some time financially, levy wise, so we can take our time on the authority if it becomes a reality.
Mr. Allison.
Just a little bit perspective on our two flood employees. South side for their section has two. So we're way understaffed. Just to do regular maintenance on the pumps and testing and all that kind of thing. I've been in on a few of those meetings talking about, well, it's gone back 5 years or so, at least, when those, when the first concept began to be pushed about having an authority. Some of us took a trip down to Sunbury to look at their plan that they had, and then were able to put it into practice. I think we really need the county to help coordinate everybody, since there's several municipalities, and I think they're ready to do it, but like the mayor said, there's a lot of, we have a big project in front of us now with the levy, so we need to take care of that first and then bring the others along. It would really, the levy protects over $1 billion worth of property and business and all of those things, but it really affects the whole county. So the idea is, it's not just our local municipalities. We have to sell it to the whole county. So there's a lot of different things that play to make that a reality, but it's doable.
Yeah. Mr. Biter.
Is anything within the flood control portion of the budget dedicated to Graphius Run?
No.
Going forward, I'd like to see something like that, some kind of preventative maintenance until we can come up with a plan. I know that Mr. Sanders has been working on that, but I think it would be in our best interest to dedicate some true budget dollars to that. So as you saw over the weekend, we don't continue to have the issues that we do.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Continue on. Recreation.
2220 recreation. Salaries, FICA, health insurance, workman's comp, pensions, health insurance, supplies and materials, general office supplies, support equipment, software, purchases and services, advertisement, subscription dues, office rental, city hall operating allocations, training and communications for a total of 132,195.
Do we want to just go through the next couple of pages for the entire recreation, or does anybody have any questions on this page? Okay, you want to just go through the next 2 pages, then we can just talk about recreation as a whole.
Recreation program, 2230, salaries, FICA, workman's comp, electricity, arts and grant program, programs, supplies, transportation, supplies and maintenance, concerts in the park and special events, facility maintenance, and capital projects for a total of 96,516. Swimming pool programs, 2291, salaries, FICA, workman's comp, trainings, electric, pool supplies, bathhouse supplies, pool preparation, pool equipment repairs, bathhouse equipment repairs, water equipment, chemicals, and capital projects for a total of 175,906.
All right, that covers us for the recreation department. Does anybody have any comments or questions on any of those 3 pages? Mr. Pelisi?
Scott, real quick, swimming pool, program and others. Pool preparation, I see $10,000 for pool preparation. And it's one that I haven't seen prior. What is pool preparation?
I believe it's to get some of the chemicals that we use for the pool, the DE, the chlorine, some of it. And then a lot of it's for the bathhouse supplies. They have lifeguards and stuff, stretchers that she's got to get.
Okay.
And some of the things for that inside the bathhouse.
I was going to ask also about the 17.5 for pool equipment repairs, but then considering what we've been through, I'm just gonna leave that alone.
You can ask about it. So that 17.5, I need to get new filters for that.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I was looking at you, John. You're looking at me like you're going to say something or like question. Yeah. So, yeah, anyway. Mrs. Katz, Ms. Mealy, did you have a question also? Are you done, Vince?
For now,
Mrs. Katz?
Is the splash pad included in this budget?
Yes, the chemicals and the water will be added to, it's added into this. The water consumption that we're going to use out there, the chemicals are in this for that. Yep.
That's what, yes, I want to make sure that was included in. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions with recreation? Ms. Mealy?
I'm assuming the training budget is related to paying for lifeguards to receive lifeguard training, because I'm assuming that's something that we're finding necessary moving forward. Okay. I don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to make sure that that was what it was related to. Okay. That's everything.
Mr. Mackey?
Where do we stand on finding a new rec director?
Starting on Monday.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll hopefully we'll be able to maybe come and we can introduce them. If not, then December 8th at the.
Okay.
council meeting. Yep.
Great.
So ready to roll.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. I think all we have left, Scott, is the Parks Department.
All right. Parks 2240, salaries, overtime, FICA, life insurance, workman's comp, pensions, health insurance, the heat, travel, tree removal, contract services, equipment repair, Brandon Park, electric bill, Wade's Garden electric bill, Bowman Field electric bill, Memorial Park electric, Youngs Woods, water and sewer, Wade's Garden Commission, Festival of Lights, gas and oil, protective clothing, uniforms, other park materials, new trees, flowers and shrubs, Brandon Park tree maintenance, equipment, vehicle repairs, repairs of other equipment, home field improvements, and capital projects for a total of $726,946.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy?
It's minor, but I'm delighted to see that we're budgeting a little bit more for new trees, flowers and shrubs. I'm assuming that's partly related to the fact that we've seen a decrease in grant funding for trees in the city. I said I'm assuming that's partly related to the fact that we've seen a decrease in grant funding for new street trees and things like that in the city, or what are we planning to? We have, for as long as I can remember, budgeted $1,000 for trees, flowers and shrubs, and this year it's 3,000, which is great. But
Yeah, that's to honestly get a few of the trees, flowers and shrubs. It's to
Yeah.
just help fund that a lot of the things. There was another one in here.
yeah.
It's revolved around the trees.
Mhm.
But it's something that was cut and we put back in.
And I know we had obviously a lot of discussion around trees lately. And so if there was an area where we could get a few extra, we put that in there. Now, if we are fortunate enough to have some of that grant come back, then obviously that will help here. But I know we've been talking about that a lot, so we figured we'd put a little bit in there for that.
Have we been soliciting donations for like the Brandon Park tree planting, et cetera, et cetera? Have we had luck with that the last couple of years, or is it sort of?
Yeah, on Arbor Day, I don't remember. We've had, yes. So
Yeah.
there's been donations.
There's like 200 trees.
Yeah, and I forget the name of the different organizations that have donated, but they were there for Arbor Day this year. We did the ceremony at Brandon Park, and Chad and our forester and everyone is there. So yes, we've been fortunate with a decent number of donations. Yes.
Good, at least. All right, thanks.
Mr. Pelisi?
Back. Scott, are we seeing a reduction in the streets and parks workforce?
No,
I've noticed
6.
salaries, overtime, insurance. It's all gone down from the 2022 budget to the 2023 budget. So I wasn't sure if we're seeing retirees coming up or.
There is, the overtime probably went down. My overtime's really high in the streets department, as you can see. So these guys are usually last to get called out during snow events or anything of that nature. The health insurance, I believe, went down. So, but no, it's still a six-person department.
Okay, I just noticed also that the 2022 budget was for salaries was 303,932, and this year is 312 over 6 people. I don't know, maybe it's just me, the math I was doing in my head, it seemed like it didn't seem like enough for 6 people over 1 year, so no worries. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Scott, you're a free man.
Nobody wants to hear about the equipment I want to buy.
Well, I mean, now that you
I
asked.
hope not. I can't afford
Do we get to drive it?
it. I want a new
Because if
tractor.
not,
Why'd you gotta go there, Scott? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Good.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much. We will move on to our miscellaneous fund budgets. Tracy, I presume you're gonna walk us through these, or is it in conjunction with a couple people? Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. Tracy, I don't know if it makes any sense. Do you just want to go page by page in this section? Because I mean, the order on the agenda is different than what's in the budget. If it's easier, we can just go by the order that's in the budget, if that works for you and everybody else.
Sure.
Just page by page.
Okay, so.
What page are we starting on?
So we're starting in the pages behind the first blue page. So by my math, it's page 34. So, and all of them are back to back. between the first and second blue pages. And John will correct me if this is the point where I mixed up my page numbers, so. I got it, all right, hey, and then it was later on.
34, did you get it right?
It was really a test for you guys. Page number thing.
Some of us passed, some of us failed.
Yeah,
I'm failing flying colors.
I can do statistics and regression models, but I can't label pages. What sense does that make? So my cohort would be
We
proud.
all have our strengths, Adam.
What's that?
That we all have our strengths. None of mine relate to spreadsheets.
If that's what you prefer, it doesn't matter.
I don't need you right now. How about I yell for you?
Okay.
Okay, so the first page should say in the top left-hand corner, should say Capital Projects Fund 40. Okay, so instead of looking at this page, I'm going to take you to the last 2 pages of your document. Because this is just, that fund is just a recap of what you're going to see on those last 2 pages. So what every department did is they went through their major equipment purchases and they scheduled them out, gave you information if it was available, such as your purchase, those types of things, estimated the useful lives of their equipment. And then what we did, we said, based on where they are in their useful life, how much money should we have saved to date? And that is the proposed savings 2022 column, I think is the name of it. Yeah, proposed savings through 2022. And then each year for the next 5 years showed what they need to save in order to make those purchases on those dates. So I'm sure Scott would be happy to go through his capital acquisitions on the capital page first, since he was already up. It's up there, it's the last 2 pages.
Okay, yeah, let's just let her rip, I guess, huh? So, for me, recreation, we'll start with recreation. Memorial bathhouse roof. Expected years to be 30 years, over that. So I had 3 quotes come back. I got an estimate in ballpark, it's gonna be around $15,000 to repair that roof, to pretty much get another 20 years out of it, I believe. See, Shaw Memorial Bathhouse, average years of expectancy 15 years, and that was $11,000. Trying to figure this out. Shaw Memorial Electrical, which I wanted to put a new electrical in out there for the splash pad and update the electrical in the actual bathhouse that's out there. And that was estimated at $15,000 to do. But there's some change of plans right now out there, so we'll see how that goes. Shaw bathhouse roof. I was trying to scramble for a bunch of historical data on when that roof was put on. I really don't know. Right now, I looked at it, it's pretty good shape. So it'll probably be roughly around $40,000 to repair that roof when that time happens. And I don't have anything till potentially purchasing that in, I don't know, 2030. Let's see about future years. Brandon bathhouse roof. Which was 30 years and $30,000 to repair that. And that was anticipated to repair that one 3032. We'll jump down to the parks. So John Deere number 31 was purchased in 2002. About 15 years we can get out of one of those machines. roughly around $55,000. And I would like to replace that next year. Bucket truck for our forester in the Parks Department. That was purchased in 2006. That's good for about 20 years. And that truck costs about $250,000. Now, when that time comes, there will be a chance to get money back off that. I don't know value of it, 20, 30, 40,000 for a trade-in. And my Parks Department again is truck number 29, which is one of my T-Tag trucks, 17,000 pound GVW truck, was purchased in 2007. Life expectancy 20 years, and that truck's going to run roughly right around $70,000. And I would like to purchase that truck in 2026. Truck 27, was purchased in 2011. Life expectancy of these trucks, about 15 years. That truck's going to cost roughly around $60,000, and that will be, I want to purchase that truck in 2026 as well. Truck 18. Truck 18. There's another 2011, $15,000, $60,000 truck. That may be in 2026 too, I'm not sure. Truck 23 is a 2013, 15 years, $25,000. $60,000 for that truck. Replacement year is 2028. Frontier Batwings, which is the mowers for our John Deeres that fold down, mow roughly 12 feet wide. That was purchased in 2013, good for about 15 years or about $25,000 purchase. That is, I'd like to get in 2028. X-Mark mower, this is 2009, good for about 15 years, about $15,000 to replace it, and I would like to do it in 2030. John Deere number 32, which is one of our newer ones, is a 2020, good for about 15 years. Estimated value is around 55,000 now, and we are out in 2032 to upgrade that one. John Deere 55, which is 2018, 15 years at 50,000 to do, and we'd like to replace that in 2032. Another set of bat wings. They're our newest ones. They're in 2020, which I'd like. They're about 25,000, and replace them in 2035. Down on my streets park transport vehicle and bucket. So the bucket I have one for my mini excavator. I like to get that piece of equipment for my mini to start cleaning ditches throughout the city. A lot of them are clogged up, non-existent anymore. They used to do it with the grader. We do not have a grader anymore. This is a cheaper version for that. And it worked really well. So that, with the transport vehicle and a bucket, I'd like to get this year for $60,000. Our city transport vehicle roughly lasts about $10,000, 10 years, and we're $30,000, which we'd like to purchase, obvious, in the 2023 year as well. My flood control hillsider replacement, which is a mower that mows the side of the levee. I'd like to replace it with a vent track, which it's a 8-wheeled machine that does the side of the levee. It's a much safer piece of equipment than the hillside. The hillsider is a 1999, has purple plates. So, joke. It'll last 15 years. Roughly around $52,000. I'd like to purchase that this year. Truck 10 out of the flood department or flood control. It's a 2006. 15 years for that truck. I'd like it will last $55,000, and that is up to be updated in 2024. And then I have a vent track right now in the flood department. That's this one, which was purchased in 2011. That will be Lasts for 15 years, $45,000. And I'd like to replace that in 2026. I'm trying to get all my parks equipment to a 15-year rotation. Same with some of my vehicles. I'd like it to be less, but with our service that these guys perform on these pieces of equipment, they do last quite a while. So.
2291.
Back to first.
Recreation. The pool.
Oh. 2291, the pool filter. Okay. So the pool filter we have right now is a DE filter. These were put in back in I think in the 80s. Everybody went with them. Top of the line stuff back in the day. They are pretty much, they're dangerous to have. The DE white substance that you have to dump in the pit is pretty harmful to any human to be around, obviously. So we have that system right now. The new system I want to get is going to be roughly around $200,000. Obviously it's not feasible right now. So I want to, run through capital budget to be able to buy this. What we have now, we'll continue to use the DE system. We just have to make sure we're in the proper PPE in that building. After that powder is distributed into the filters, you have to get out of the room, let it air out, because it's like silica dust. You breathe it in, it's bad stuff. And I had pool specialists there. They can't even believe we use it, but the high school used to use it. Everybody uses it, but everybody switched over. It's past that point. So I would like to look into getting that in the capital projects for $200,000 to get in 2027. The pool gutter system, the scum gutter, as all you remember, the one that we went through and pressure tested last year. He came in, they fixed 50 holes, passed inspection, it was great. The guy said, this is, it'll work for about 6 more years. And then you're gonna have to repair it or replace it, not repair it. It's gonna need a new one, which was good and bad because now it gave me 6 years to put in capital projects to actually save up for it. It's about $30,000 and I'd like to potentially look into that, getting that in 2028.
Okay. So you're essentially, if I read this right, anything in green in 2023, you're proposing to do, right?
Yeah.
And everything in the future, you're planning to do the year that it's green up until 2027, if not, and then if it's not there, it's in the future, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Any questions, Liz, Ms. Milling?
Yeah, just a couple. We might dicker around about specific things that we're spending money on this list. I conceptually like the idea of backfilling funding that should have been in these lines previously with ARPA funding. I think that's a solid approach that allows us to get onto a schedule. At least it makes more sense than our previous strategies. So the concept is the current budget is then supporting that 610,000 that we're budgeting for 2023. So the 2,060,000 is prior savings that should have happened that did not. Current budget is supporting the 610,000. I think I have 2 questions. One is that you're showing funding methods for some of these items and none for others. And I'm a little confused because my understanding is that the whole proposed savings line is all ARPA funding, correct? The proposed savings in 2022, every cent of that is coming from ARPA.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we were pulling things in from different sources to try to pull this together for you. So those were just ideas people had. So for instance, if they said, if you said, we don't want to take the strategy this way, we don't want to put this 1-year funding in and grow from there, then we still need to buy these things. So how can we buy them? So that was more of what people were thinking when they were filling out that column.
Okay, so this is not telling me how you're proposing to fund these contributions.
Correct.
In the coming years.
Correct.
That's telling me that you're proposing, for instance, to finance the codes vehicles that we're not looking to purchase until a future year anyway?
Well,
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to figure
no,
out.
I agree. That column's confusing. So what we were trying to figure out was, this is the strategy that we thought would be the best strategy for the city to move forward in terms of
Okay.
a solid capital budget. But
Right.
if you said to us today, we don't agree with this strategy, Scott still needs his pool filters. So how's he going to pay for them? So they were trying to figure out if you didn't approve this, to let you know that we're going to ask for it from ARPA anyway
Okay, so what you're telling me is that line has no bearing.
on this,
this
in this
capital
currently.
process.
Yes.
Okay,
I
got it.
can remove that from future copies.
Okay.
That was just more an internal thing.
Got it. And so what we are looking, and then, so that brings me to a second question, which is, yes, that then we're budgeting in future years, if we abide by this capital budget unamended, we're budgeting $610,502 annually that we are hoping in the projected timeframe will enable us to cover future costs of the items listed on this
Right.
capital, right? Are we proposing to, I'm assuming that all of this funding will be going into an interest-bearing account.
Correct.
Are we hoping that the interest will cover any potential cost increases on those items? Have we somewhat over budgeted the cost of those items in hopes that when we get there, we'll have the money? Sorry. Because that's the only place, I mean, I know that nobody has a crystal ball and that we
Right.
have no idea, but
Right.
that's where it all falls apart when we get to 2030 and Scott says, oh, well, actually, now it's going to cost,
Well,
$500,000 for the new pool filter or whatever. Or,
And if I know I'm getting within a 2-year, 3-year frame of purchasing that, obviously I can go after upgraded or updated prices. I know things are going to change within the next 7 years. I don't know what they are. This is just.
Yeah.
Right. We
And-
used our best estimates and they're not static.
Okay.
Correct.
But these are actual estimates currently for the
Right.
cost of these
Yeah.
items. These are not estimates with 15% added for future
No.
cost.
No,
Okay.
they're current estimates.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, that's, sorry, just information for us to bear in mind moving
Yes,
forward. That's really all I need to know. Okay, I think I understand this a bit better now, and sorry, Scott, I don't have any specific questions on any of your specific items, all of which sound to me like they are probably necessary in the future here moving forward. So, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on Mr. Mackey?
Sorry, we can go back to the pool filter real quick.
Mhm.
How many times over the course of the summer are your guys going into that room to dump this dangerous substance into the filter? Is
Every
it just
2
a
weeks.
one-time deal?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks? Is there any discussion on just buying this thing with ARPA money? I mean, and again, I understand it's a pool, right? Yeah, but so what we're saying is that we're gonna wait how many years to save up to 5 years?
5 years, 2027.
We're gonna wait 5 years and save money and let our employees go in there every 2 weeks and dump this stuff into the thing when we've got money sitting in the bank and we could just buy this thing and be done with it. That to me sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, regardless of any individual thoughts on, the pool itself, any of the I mean, I would agree. I think we should figure out how to do that pretty
So-
quickly for next year. So we should have really done that when we had the pool shut down,
I
to be
mean,
honest with you.
well, this is the first time I've ever heard
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
about this pool filter. and-
Same here.
Right,
And
so, yeah.
Scott, you weren't around when we
Yeah.
went through the
No.
whole shutdown with the pool. I mean,
Right.
I don't know when you learned about it, but I mean, you're just trying to plan for it. I mean, I get all that,
No, a
Um,
month ago.
Yeah,
when
well,
this all
so there
came,
you
yeah,
go.
'cause
So,
I
I
was
mean,
having-
good
I did-
timing of bringing it forward, but
Yeah.
we should figure that out pretty quick.
I just, and again, I'm not suggesting that this is what's happening. What I don't want the administration to do is not come to city council with an ARPA expenditure just because you think we're going to say no, because that's kind of been the status quo to some extent. There's been some hesitation on our part.
Right.
you know.
No, and that wasn't, so I don't.
Right,
understand.
and again, I'm not suggesting that's why we did it. I'm just saying that we're talking about our own employees here, right? And we've got money sitting in the bank, so let's solve this pretty minuscule problem in terms of money. I mean, $200,000 is a lot of money, but
Somebody to like,
Does the continuing cost, it will need to be replaced again then in 5 years, Scott? So it is
Replace it
still-
again in 5 years?
Yeah,
No, once, I haven't got to that much research on, it'll last more than 5 years, the new system.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
also to the point, if we
Quite a bit.
replace it sooner, then we've got a longer or a lower annual payment moving forward, so. I don't just- Right. Or theoretically, right? Okay.
And you have no idea also how long it would take to purchase this piece of equipment.
That's the other. hard
Probably
decision.
not 5 years, though.
To purchase it?
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
you're not, we wouldn't not be able to get one until 2027, one way or the other, right?
If I would say this was in council tonight and you guys give me the yes, I'm gonna struggle to get this stuff here by opening time.
Okay.
That's my
Well,
problem with
So
it.
I think regardless of that, though, like, I would suggest start looking at it
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
had 3 different people already
for
there.
December.
Yep.
So
Because
Well-
what happened, how I fell on.
I would like to know more about it. I
Mhm.
mean,
Well, how I came
As
onto
soon as we
this, I
can.
had people coming in because I needed new pull filters, fingers.
Yep.
The DE fingers. Well, they're like, you're running a system that's not even really run by anybody anymore. You need this one. And when I'm like, okay, what, 40, 50 grand? They're like, no, more like 200. I'm like.
Yeah.
And he's like, we'll be lucky to get you operational by for this summer. I'm like.
Yeah.
What do I do?
And is that the cost now?
Mhm.
It's not going to escalate any higher.
well,
I'm
it could,
sure it will,
as of
but-
right
Well,
now, yeah,
exactly.
right now.
If I was,
I
if
bet
you
you
would
that-
tell me yes, it would be around that.
If we put
ballpark, yes.
an order in now, that would be the cost.
Right. So what we'll do is we'll
Ish.
research it, get you something
Yeah.
by the December meeting. Like you said, we just we didn't know about this from the,
No.
before.
Yeah,
We
understood.
came across it. That's why we decided to put in the capital project so we could have the discussion we're having. But Scott has already started to research it, and so we can definitely bring more information forward for council to for consideration.
There goes your John Deere #1.
You need more than one John Deere.
So outside of the filter, any other questions on anything that Public Works has presented? Ms. Mealy?
Actually, this is not outside of the filter, but also to the filter point. If it looks feasible for us to change the filter by the beginning of the 2023 season, then have we already expended money to acquire parts for the old one?
No.
Okay, good. Then
Yeah,
it seems like
nothing.
we should wait for that until we determine whether or not. we
Yeah.
have something else in place. All right, that was all I wanted.
Okay.
I don't think I have any. Aside from the fun names on all of your equipment, yeah, there's really nothing.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Who's next?
So in terms of the capital projects fund budget, the rest of it, I think we could wait till the other departments come up and speak about their pieces because that's what makes up the totality of the capital projects fund. Does that make sense?
I'm fine with that.
I think that makes more sense.
Yes.
Okay. With it.
That's perfectly
all the
fine.
time.
Perfect. Then the next budget is, I believe, City Hall operating in the upper left-hand corner. It should say City Hall operating number 70.
Yep.
Okay, so again, within this fund, what you'll see is facilities, operations of old City Hall, current City Hall, and then the IT budget. So, gosh. In terms of facilities, we have supplies and materials, telephone, sewer, water, heat, electricity, repairs, facility maintenance, contracted services, and then a transfer. It's called contingency, but that's actually a transfer to the debt service fund. To come to a total budget this year, proposed budget of 283,000, 22 budget was 234,000.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Chris isn't here to talk about his IT budget. And I could speak to it, but I wouldn't speak well on it. But what I will say is that these are the two departments, again, that are now being allocated out to those departments of the general fund, and I will look at allocation methods.
Okay.
Liquid fuels is the next budget. Liquid
Ms.
fuels.
Neal, you had a
I'm sorry.
question quick?
Well, just one question, because I didn't go through and add up all the rental income versus other
It adds up.
numbers in the budget. It all
It
adds
adds
up.
up. Yep, I
That,
just
that
did it.
total number between rental and,
So it adds up evenly. So the total revenue of 621,829, if you add up two.
oh, no. I know those two. add
Okay,
up
what do you?
To
add?
621. What I'm asking is in the budget, we had, sorry, let me return back here too. So we have office rental as well as city hall operating allocation. Those two numbers in total add up to 621 across all city departments.
No, the rental is separate. That is directly allocated in the lease to each department.
Got it. So
The ones
that
that
all
say
goes to a
city
lease that is
hall-
not appearing in the city hall operating budget
Correct,
at all.
correct.
Okay, got it.
The ones that
Alright.
say city hall operating allocation, those add up to the
That's
691.
this,
Yeah.
621. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
No
I'm
worries.
just
I
trying to track
thought
it.
you were asking something differently.
Um,
Tracy, quick question. Do you know what the, where is it? Contract services is 122 for him? Do you know what that is off the top of your head for Chris?
Contract services under which department?
Under the IT budget on the city hall operating fund.
Okay, so I can track. Contract services. Okay. Again, Chris would be better to speak to you on this, but I'll tell you what he has written on this line.
Okay.
MDM Manage Engine, $1,400. Sophos Antivirus, $8,700. Unitrends Backup, $11,000. Anti-spam software, $1,400. Website work, $600. Zapier, $900. Comcast, $8,000. Cybersecurity and monitoring, $62,000. And then $27,000 for payroll outsourcing. So
So
I-
you're booking payroll outsourcing through IT?
Yes, because
Okay.
that's where all the software is being purchased, those types of services. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. That was helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions that I can answer for you on that? Absent Chris.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next page should say liquid fuels in the upper left-hand side, Fund 70. So liquid fuels is money that you get from the state. It's specifically restricted for certain categories. The budget was put together as a combination of Scott, John, and myself. The budget pretty much is standard with respect to the prior year. There was a little bit more put in street resurfacing this year than in the past.
Any comments or questions on the liquid fuels budget? Ms. Mealy here.
I was actually just going to ask how our street resurfacing monies have shaped up this year compared to prior years. This is in part just because I didn't do my research, but
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to answer that right off on the spot, so I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can look into it for you.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
helpful. I can't remember what we booked out of community development. This number is more or less static, and I want to say the street resurfacing numbers from liquid fuels and the general fund in the streets line were similar to last year, so I'm assuming, but anyway, just curious what we're planning to do with our streets monies. So if you could
I
maybe
will.
talk about that next time, that'd be great.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No other questions? Okay.
The next budget in the packet should say debt service in the upper left-hand corner, Fund 11. So here is where you'll see the transfer from the general fund is significantly higher than was budgeted in the prior year. And again, that's because of the underfunding that occurred in prior years. There's also funding that comes in to the debt service fund from Act 13, liquid fuels, and from City Hall operating. All of those transfer sources come together to pay the debt service that is appropriately budgeted in the current year.
Any comments or questions on the debt service fund?
Actually, sorry.
Yeah.
I
Ms.
still have
Mueller.
one. So our current level of debt service in total is the 1,884,322.
I'm sorry, say that one more, that
I
number
said
one more
our
time.
the current amount of money we're paying toward all city-owned debt is $1,884,322.
There's a
Principal and
small-
interest combined.
There's a small amount in there. It says transfer to capital projects for $51,000. You have $51,000 in bond proceeds still sitting in that account that need to be transferred into capital projects. So it
Okay.
would be, if you added up the 655
Uh-huh.
and the 1175, that's 1.83.
Got
is
it.
your-
And I
is your
saw that
debt
come
service.
in. Where is it going? It's not going anywhere. It doesn't look like.
Where's what going?
The transfer from debt service, $51,000. Is it simply hanging out in
Oh,
capital
no,
projects?
it's
at this
going
point?
into capital projects fund, right?
Okay,
No? Did I wipe it out?
That's there.
yeah, no,
a-
it's
it's
there. I
right.
guess what I'm saying is we are not spending it. It is going into the capital projects budget, but I'm not.
Right, it's
showing
not
that
being
we're
spent,
spending
right,
it,
I'm doing,
correct.
it's just transferring it
Okay.
over, just to get it out of debt service and to be used.
Got it,
Appropriately.
sometime,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is it in the long run expended on all the equipment, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm sorry.
It's a little hard to tell because we're transferring in this 2 million
Yeah,
some dollars.
gets buried.
And much of it is going into equipment that we're looking at purchasing in the future. That 51,000 is promised somewhere towards some piece of equipment or some other capital item.
I'll take a look,
Okay.
because I'm not aware of what the original bond proceeds were, so I'll check that out.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, the next fund is Act 13, again, left top side should say Act 13, Fund 42. So Act 13, we don't have any idea what we're getting from year to year. So I budgeted conservatively in line with the prior year. You did receive 528,000 during 2022. I kept the budget at 250. Again, I asked around to see if I could get an idea of what that number was, but they just don't provide you with any estimates. And then the expenses that are included as part of this fund, there's $175,000 match that is needed for a FEMA brick grant for the levy. So that's budgeted there. $200,000 for street resurfacing, and then $200,000 goes to debt service.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members of council on the Act 13 budget? Okay. You keep going.
The next fund should say pool repair fund in the upper left-hand corner, Fund 43. There is a transfer in from the general fund budgeted for $2,000, but again, I did not budget any expense because the cash balance at this point is $46,000.
Any questions from members of council?
Sorry, Adam, I actually have a question on that.
Yep.
Given that we are actually budgeting for expending money on Memorial Pool through the capital budget, do we want to, I'm just putting that
Should we
out there.
dissolve it?
Yeah, should we dissolve it and put the money into, I don't know. I mean, the whole concept was if we have a mechanism for creating basically a savings account for equipment moving forward and other expenditures moving forward, then it would make sense to put this fund into that mechanism. Right, so just putting that out there.
Yeah, it's food for thought.
And actually, can I go back and ask one question on Act 13? Sorry.
No.
Oh, no,
I'm
absolutely
kidding.
not.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are spending all the funding that we have in Act 13 this year, including surplus. So, but our annual allocation, expected annual allocation is about 250.
Right, that's correct. And then a cash carryover, you're using cash carryover of $323,000 to balance that fund.
Right. Yes. So I guess what I'm saying is next year, the anticipated amount of money that we would expect to receive from Act 13 is more like 250. I know you don't have a crystal
called
ball.
around and I can't get an estimate, so I just used that number because it was what has been used in the past.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
well, I guess all that I'm saying is we're putting 200,000 into street resurfacing and $200,000 into debt service out of that fund. But more than likely, we will not have one of those two chunks of funding available to us in the 2024 budget because we're spending prior year surplus, correct?
You have $1 million sitting in your Act 13 fund right now.
Okay, so we've
So
got
you're
a
using
little more.
323,000 of
Of
that
that,
to
We'll
balance.
have
So we've got
surplus if we need it
couple-
in
yes.
2024. is
We've
what
got
you're
it.
saying.
So we've got,
There's
okay,
plenty of money in there to spend on Act 13 expenses, yes.
okay, right, okay.
And a part of that is the fact that you got 528,000 in the current year, right?
Okay.
And hadn't
Got it.
anticipated that high a distribution.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So I was misreading this. So our annual allocation was more like 525, give or take, or has.
It was for
No,
2022.
it was for 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really drifted. Okay, we'll see. But good. So yeah, so we're only actually really spending about 50,000 more than what we were allocated this year. Okay, got it. Sounds good.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Tracy. I think that's all of them.
Perfect.
That wraps up item 1 on the agenda. Pretty quick. Number 2, announcements. So our second budget work session is going to be held on Monday, November 21st, 2022, right here, Trade and Transit 2 at 7 p.m. Upcoming meetings, Thursday, November 17th, 10:30 a.m. zoning hearing board, Monday, December 5th at 12 p.m. planning commission, Tuesday, December 6th, 1 p.m. finance committee, 2:30 p.m. public works, Wednesday, December 7th, 9 a.m. is our economic revitalization, at 11:30 a.m. public safety, and our next actual regularly scheduled city council meeting is Thursday, December 8th. Take a motion for, well, we don't need the motion, actually. A call for adjournment. We're good to go. See everybody Monday. Thank you all very much.